The first time Claire Whitcomb asked me to sleep with her, she was holding a glass of bourbon she clearly hated, wearing a black dress that made half the hotel lobby forget how to breathe, and looking at me like I was a problem she intended to solve before midnight. One night, she said, then tomorrow we go back to hating each other. I should have laughed. I should have reminded her that we had spent 3 years trying to destroy each other in conference rooms with glass walls and bad coffee. I should have said a mature, responsible 32-year-old man didn't make life-changing mistakes with his work rival during a sales leadership retreat in Chicago. Instead, I said, "You drink bourbon now?" Her mouth twitched. "I'm evolving." "You ordered it because I did." "I ordered it because the bartender looked busy and I panicked." That was Claire. Sharp enough to slice through a quarterly forecast with one eyebrow, honest only when it surprised her, and somehow more dangerous when she was embarrassed. My name is Ethan Brooks. I was 32 then, regional strategy lead at Marlowe and Finch, a tech consulting firm that loved words like synergy and alignment because apparently exhausted employees fighting over impossible targets didn't fit nicely on a slide deck. Claire was 31, head of client acquisitions, and the only person in the company who could make me work harder just by entering a room. For 3 years, our boss, Graham Vale, had treated us like opposing weapons. If I built a proposal, he asked Claire to tear holes in it. If she landed a client, he asked me whether the margins were sustainable. Every Monday meeting became a polite knife fight. People chose sides. Team Ethan liked charts, early deadlines, and not pretending chaos was innovation. Team Claire liked instinct, fast decisions, and making my carefully built spreadsheets look like they needed a nap. At least that was the story everybody told. The truth was more annoying. I respected her. Not publicly, of course. Publicly, I called her projections optimistic fiction. Publicly, she called my risk assessments emotional support spreadsheets. Publicly, we performed exactly the way everyone expected. But privately? Privately, I noticed things. I noticed how she never took credit for junior staff ideas unless she said their names first. I noticed she carried peppermint tea bags in her laptop bag because hotel coffee gave her migraines. I noticed that when someone tried to talk over her, she didn't raise her voice. She got quieter, which somehow made the room lean in. And yes, fine, I noticed the way she looked that night. I'm not made of stone. We were in the hotel lobby after the first day of the retreat, surrounded by consultants pretending not to eavesdrop. The lobby had tall windows full of city lights, brass lamps, and furniture so modern it seemed personally offended by comfort. A jazz trio played near the bar soft enough to make everyone believe they were having expensive thoughts. Claire stood close enough that I could smell her perfume. Something clean and warm, like vanilla trying to behave professionally. "You're staring," she said. "I'm trying to determine if this is a trap." "It's not a trap." "That's what a trap would say." She took a sip of bourbon, winced, and set it down. I smiled before I could stop myself. "Don't," she warned. I didn't say anything. "You smiled in 12-point times new condescension. That's my default font." She looked away, but I saw it. The smallest laugh. The kind she would never give me in a meeting because we had reputations to maintain. Then her expression changed. Across the lobby, Graham Vale stood near the elevators with two board members and a drink in his hand. He was silver-haired, handsome in the expensive way, and always seemed relaxed because panic was something he outsourced. When he noticed us together, his smile sharpened. Claire saw him too. Her shoulders tightened. "There he is," she murmured. "Our fearless leader." "Don't call him that. It makes my eye twitch." Graham lifted his glass at us like a king acknowledging peasants who had performed adequately. Then he turned to one of the board members and said something that made them both glance our way. I couldn't hear the words, but Claire's face told me she could guess. "Let me guess," I said. "He's telling them. He's telling. We're both brilliant but difficult." He told Lisa from finance I was useful when contained. My jaw tightened. "He said that?" Claire looked at me, surprised by my tone. "Careful, Brooks." That almost sounded like concern. It was professional disgust. "Of course." There was a pause. Not the usual kind between us, not tactical, not loaded with the next comeback. Just quiet. The jazz music slipped around us. Someone laughed too loudly at the bar. An elevator chimed. Claire traced one finger around the rim of her glass. "I'm tired," she said. The words were simple, but they landed hard. Because Claire never admitted weakness. Not to me, not to anyone. She could be running on 3 hours of sleep in hotel almonds, and she'd still walk into a client meeting like she had invented sunlight. "Tired of the retreat?" I asked. Tired of being cast as the villain in a play I never auditioned for. I didn't know what to say. That was rare for me. Her eyes met mine, and for once there was no challenge in them, just exhaustion, and something else I had no business wanting to name. Then, as if she regretted giving me anything real, she picked up her bourbon again. "So," she said, voice lighter, "my proposal. Your terrible proposal. You haven't heard the terms. One night, then back to hating each other. I'm fairly sure those were the terms. There are subclauses. Of course there are. No office gossip, no emotional post-mortem, no dramatic breakfast, no pretending it meant more than it did." I leaned back against the bar, trying to look amused instead of completely unsteady. "And why me?" She looked at me like the answer irritated her. "Because you're attractive." My brain, which had successfully survived mergers, layoffs, client emergencies, and a CFO who once asked me to make the numbers more emotionally inspiring, immediately stopped working. Claire noticed. "Oh, don't look so pleased." "I'm not pleased. I'm documenting the statement for accuracy. You're impossible. You're the one propositioning your enemy in a lobby full of coworkers. You're not my enemy." That stopped me. She seemed to hear herself a second too late. Her fingers tightened around the glass. "I mean," she corrected, "not outside business hours." I studied her. The smart answer was no. The safe answer was no. The answer any man with a functioning sense of self-preservation would give was absolutely not, because Claire Whitcomb wasn't the kind of woman you touched and then forgot. She was the kind of woman who made forgetting feel like cowardice. "Claire," I said carefully, "are you doing this because you're angry at Graham?" Her eyes flicked toward him again. "No." "Because you're lonely?" That's a little personal for a man who once described my client retention model as a scented candle in a hurricane. It was a memorable quarter. It was a bad metaphor. It was accurate. There it was again, that almost smile. Then she stepped closer. Not much. Just enough that the space between us changed from professional to dangerous. "I'm doing this," she said, "because for 3 years everyone in that office has decided what we are to each other. Rivals, problems, entertainment. Graham's favorite little war." Her voice dropped, "And maybe I want one night where nobody gets to use us." The words hit somewhere beneath my ribs, not because they were seductive, because they were honest. I looked at her hand resting on the bar close enough that I could have touched it by accident. I didn't. But I wanted to. That want, restrained and stupidly tender, scared me more than the offer itself. "What happens tomorrow?" I asked. She swallowed. "Tomorrow we survive the keynote, insult each other's slide decks, and pretend this conversation never happened." "And tonight?" Her eyes held mine. "Tonight we stop pretending for a few hours." I should have walked away. Instead, I paid for both drinks, because apparently I still had manners at the edge of disaster. We crossed the lobby side by side, not touching, which somehow felt more intimate than if we had been. Every step toward the elevators tightened something in my chest. Just before the doors opened, Graham's voice cut through the noise behind us. "Ethan, Claire." We turned. He stood a few feet away, smiling like he had caught us stealing company property. "Interesting," he said. "I didn't realize you two were getting along now." Claire's posture snapped back into armor. "We were discussing tomorrow's client panel," she said. "At 11 at night?" I smiled. "We're very committed." Graham's eyes moved between us. For one strange second, his expression wasn't amused. It was wary. Then his phone buzzed. He glanced down and the mask slipped just enough for me to see irritation. Claire saw it too. The elevator opened behind us. Graham looked up again. "Don't forget who you are in the morning." It was a strange thing to say. Too strange. The door slid shut with Claire and me inside, sealing out the lobby noise, the jazz, the coworkers, and Graham Vale's cold little smile. We stood shoulder to shoulder in the mirrored silence. Claire didn't press her floor, neither did I. Then she turned to me, all the teasing gone from her face. "Ethan," she said quietly, "what if I told you I don't think we've ever actually hated each other?" I didn't answer right away, not because I disagreed, because hearing Claire say it out loud felt like someone opening a locked room in my own head. The elevator hummed around us. She stood inches away, reflected in three mirrored walls, looking braver than I felt. "I'd say," I managed, "that's a dangerous theory. More dangerous than going upstairs with you? That depends on how much you trust me." Her gaze softened, just a fraction. "That's the problem," she said. "I think I do." I reached past her and pressed my floor. The button lit up. Neither of us moved back. For the next 8 floors, we stood close enough that her sleeve brushed mine every time the elevator shifted. It was ridiculous, the effect that tiny contact had on me. I had once argued with Claire for 47 minutes about a pricing model and felt less exposed than I did beside her in silence. When the doors opened, she walked out first. Halfway down the hall, she glanced over her shoulder. "If your room has socks on the floor, I'm leaving." "I'm wounded. You look like a man who folds t-shirts into squares." "I do." "That's somehow worse." I unlocked the door and she stepped inside. My room was standard corporate retreat luxury: king bed, gray couch, desk, view of downtown Chicago glittering beyond the window. Claire took in the space, then looked at the bed. The air changed, her confidence flickered. I felt it too, the sudden awareness that our banter had carried us somewhere real. Somewhere with low lamplight and no audience. I shut the door softly. "Claire." She turned. "We don't have to do anything." Her expression shifted, but not toward relief. Toward something more complicated. "I know. I mean it. We can order room service and make cruel remarks about the minibar prices. You'd waste a perfectly good scandal on French fries? For you?" "I might." She laughed then, really laughed. It was quiet and surprised, and it did something unforgivable to my chest. "Careful, Brooks," she said. That was almost charming. "I've been hiding it under professionalism. Deep, deep under." She walked to the window, arms folded loosely. Without the lobby, without Graham's eyes on us, she looked different. Not softer exactly, more herself. The kind of beautiful that didn't ask permission. I stayed near the desk, giving her space, though every instinct in me wanted to cross the room. She looked back. "You're very far away for a man who agreed to a no-strings arrangement. I'm reassessing the contract." "Too many subclauses?" "One major concern." "Which is?" "I don't think I can pretend tomorrow that this didn't matter." The room went still. Claire's lips parted slightly, and for once she had no immediate answer. I wished I could take it back. Not because it wasn't true, but because truth had always been the one weapon we avoided using on each other. Then she whispered, "Good." That single word undid every rule. She crossed to me slowly, like she was giving me time to refuse. I didn't. I couldn't. When she stopped in front of me, I saw the tiny gold flecks in her eyes, the fatigue beneath them, the guarded hope she probably hated herself for showing. Her hand touched my tie. "You wore navy today," she said. "You noticed?" "I always notice." Her fingers smoothed the silk once, unnecessarily. "It makes your eyes look annoyingly sincere." "You think my eyes are sincere?" "I think your mouth is sarcastic enough to compensate." I smiled, and she smiled back, and then neither of us was smiling. I cupped her jaw, slow enough for her to stop me. She didn't. When I kissed her, it wasn't the collision I'd imagined during all those late meetings and heated arguments. It was quieter, careful, almost questioning. Then Claire made a small sound against my mouth, stepped closer, and answered. Her hand slid up my chest. Mine settled at her waist. She tasted faintly of terrible bourbon and peppermint. I had expected heat, triumph, maybe the thrill of finally crossing a forbidden line. Instead, I felt relief. Like I'd been standing across from her for years waiting for a door neither of us knew how to open. When we broke apart, she rested her forehead against mine. "This is a bad idea," she said. "Historically, yes. I had a whole plan. I could tell there were subclauses. It was supposed to be simple." I brushed my thumb along her cheek. "Claire, nothing about you has ever been simple." She closed her eyes. For a moment, I thought she might kiss me again. Instead, she said, "Graham told me not to trust you." The words landed cold between us. I drew back enough to look at her. "When?" "The month I started. He said you resented anyone who threatened your spot, that you'd sabotage me if I got too much influence." I stared at her. "He told me you said I was underqualified." Her brows pulled together. "You didn't?" "No, I told him your recruitment numbers were terrifying." "That sounds more like you." "I meant it as praise." Her mouth twisted. "He told me you asked to review all my proposals because I was reckless. He told me you requested oversight because my model slowed sales." Claire's face changed. The pieces were moving behind her eyes now, quick and sharp. I walked to the minibar, not because I wanted anything, but because I needed something to do with my hands. "Every time I tried to back your department, Graham redirected the conversation. Said you'd see it as condescension." "He did the same with me," she said. "Anytime I complimented your work, he'd say, 'Don't let Ethan hear that, he'll use it.'" A bitter laugh escaped me. "He built a wall and called it management." Claire sat on the edge of the bed, slowly, as if the room had tilted. "I thought you hated me," she said. I turned back. She wasn't performing now. No sharp chin lift, no armor, just a woman who had spent years bracing for a blow I'd never wanted to deliver. I crossed to her and knelt, not thinking about pride or optics, or any of the stupid things that had governed us for too long. "I never hated you." Her eyes shone, though she blinked it away immediately. "I hated how everyone watched us," I said. "I hated that if I agreed with you, Graham looked disappointed. I hated that you were the only person in the room who scared me because you were usually right." She gave a shaky laugh. "Usually? I'm being vulnerable. Don't exploit a technicality." Her fingers found mine. That simple contact felt more intimate than the kiss. "I respected you," she said. "So much it made me angry because I thought you were choosing to make my life harder. I thought you were choosing the same." "No." Her thumb moved over my knuckles. "I was trying to survive him." There it was. Not seduction, not rivalry, the truth. I sat beside her, our shoulders touching. For a while we talked. Really talked. About the first proposal I thought she'd stolen credit for, only to discover Graham had forwarded the wrong version. About the client dinner where she thought I'd excluded her, though Graham had told me she declined. About every tiny cut he'd placed between us, and then watched us bleed onto each other. At some point, we ordered fries. At some point, Claire kicked off her heels and curled one leg beneath her on my bed like she belonged there. At some point, I realized the night I'd thought would be about forgetting was becoming the first thing I wanted to remember clearly. She stole a fry from the carton in my hand. "You know what's irritating? My bone structure? Your confidence in that answer. It was a fair guess." She smiled, then grew quiet. "We can't go back tomorrow," she said. "No. He'll notice. Let him." Her eyes lifted to mine. "Athen." I took her hand again, chose it. Chose her, with the city shining behind us and years of lies unraveling at our feet. "I don't want to be his weapon anymore," I said. "Especially not against you." Claire looked at our joined hands. Then she leaned in and kissed me, not careful this time, but certain. A decision. A promise. When she pulled back, her mouth stayed close to mine. "Then tomorrow," she whispered, "we stop performing." I smiled against her lips. "And tonight?" Her fingers tightened around mine. "Tonight," she said, "we make a new alliance." We did not sleep together that night. Not in the way Claire had proposed. Somehow that felt more dangerous. We kissed until the city outside my window blurred into gold and black. We sat shoulder to shoulder on the floor, backs against the bed, eating fries gone cold and reconstructing 3 years of sabotage out of memory, emails, and the strange ache of realizing we had both been lonely in the same war. At 2 in the morning, Claire fell asleep with her head on my shoulder. I didn't move for 40 minutes. My arm went numb, my neck cramped. I discovered I would apparently suffer mild physical injury before disturbing Claire Whitcomb at rest. When she woke, embarrassed and soft-eyed, she said, "You should have shoved me off." I considered it. "No, you didn't." "No, I didn't." She looked at me then, in the dim light, no makeup armor left, hair loose over one shoulder, and something changed in her expression. Desire was there, yes. We'd had that from the start. But beneath it was recognition. Like she was seeing not her rival, not her mistake, but me. She touched my cheek with the back of her fingers. "This is going to be messy." "Probably. I'm difficult. I have a 3-year archive of supporting evidence." Her mouth curved. "You're arrogant, confident, pedantic, accurate, annoyingly decent." That one silenced me. Her smile faded. "I mean it." I caught her hand before she could pull away and pressed my mouth to her knuckles. It was old-fashioned and completely unplanned, which made her inhale like I'd said something reckless. "Careful," she whispered. "You'll ruin my ability to insult you." "I'm willing to risk it." She stayed in my room until dawn. We talked more than we touched. That was the part I never expected anyone to believe. The supposed no-strings night became coffee from the machine, bare feet on hotel carpet, and Claire sitting cross-legged on my bed with my laptop open between us, her dress exchanged for one of my white shirts because she said going back to her room at 4 a.m. in formal wear felt too tragically French cinema. The shirt looked better on her than it had ever looked on me. I tried not to stare. Failed. She noticed. "Brooks, I'm only human. You're also supposed to be finding the March client thread. I can multitask. Can you?" "No." She laughed, and the sound settled in me like a warning and a homecoming. By 6:30, we had enough to stop pretending we were paranoid. Graham had fed each of us altered information. Calendar invites routed through him. Notes he claimed came from Claire that didn't match her writing. Budget approvals attached to vendor accounts I'd never heard of. Missing margins. Inflated consulting hours. A pattern hidden in the noise of our rivalry. "He kept us busy fighting each other," Claire said, staring at the screen, "so neither of us would look sideways." I sat beside her, close enough that our knees touched. And if one of us noticed, the other would discredit them. She went quiet. I knew that silence now, knew the shape of her blame when she turned it inward. "Don't," I said. Her eyes flicked to mine. "Don't what?" "Make this your fault. I helped him. You survived him. So did you. Then maybe we stop punishing ourselves and start comparing notes." Her throat moved. "You make it sound easy." "No, I make it sound possible." For a moment, she just looked at me. Then she leaned forward and kissed me, slow and aching, one hand curling in the front of my shirt. This kiss was different from the others. It wasn't discovery. It wasn't rebellion. It was gratitude. Trust. When she pulled away, her forehead rested against mine. "I wish I'd known you sooner," she said. The words hit me harder than any accusation could have. "You did know me," I said softly, "just through bad translation." Her laugh broke a little. I wanted to promise things then, stupid things, too soon things, that I'd fix it, that no one would use her again, that 3 years could be undone by one night and a shared carton of fries. But Claire didn't need rescue promises. She needed a partner. So I said, "What do you want to do?" Her eyes sharpened. There she was, brilliant, strategic, impossible. "We don't confront him alone." Agreed. "We gather proof from original sources, finance, legal, client services, quietly. Graham watches both our teams. Separately, yes." A small smile appeared. "But not together. He still thinks putting us in the same room creates smoke. Then we give him smoke. And take the fire exit." I stared at her. She arched a brow. "Too much?" "No." "Perfect." By 8, we had showered separately, dressed professionally, and created the most dangerous thing Marlowe and Finch had ever seen. A shared spreadsheet. Claire named it Q3 Alignment Draft. I said, "That's evil." No one opens files named that. I'm attracted and frightened. As you should be. Before we left, she stopped at my door. The hallway outside was empty, but the moment felt public anyway. Morning light cut across the carpet. Somewhere below us, our colleagues were eating buffet eggs and preparing to watch us resume our assigned roles. Claire smoothed her blazer, armor returning piece by piece. I hated that I recognized it now. Once we step out, she said, he'll expect the usual. The sniping? The eye rolls? The casual assassination attempts? Exactly. I nodded. We can perform. Her gaze searched mine. Can we? I understood what she was really asking. Could we insult each other after everything we'd said? Could we hide this fragile new thing long enough to protect it? Could we pretend without becoming the lie again? I reached for her hand. Only for a second. A brush of fingers hidden by the door frame. We'll know the difference, I said. She exhaled. Then, bold as daylight, she rose on her toes and kissed the corner of my mouth. Not enough to ruin us, enough to mark the truth. Good morning, ally, she murmured. I smiled. Good morning, menace. Her grin flashed, then vanished as we stepped into the hall. By the time we entered the conference ballroom, Claire Whitcomb was once again my rival. She swept past me at the coffee station and said, loud enough for 3 managers to hear, try not to put the room to sleep during your market analysis, Brooks. I picked up my mug. Try not to mistake charisma for data, Whitcomb. A few people chuckled. Across the room, Graham watched us and relaxed. That was his first mistake. Claire met my eyes over the rim of her coffee cup. No warmth showed on her face. But beneath the table, 10 minutes later, when the keynote began and Graham started praising healthy internal competition, her foot found mine and pressed once. A secret, a spark, a promise. I didn't look at her, I didn't smile, I simply opened my notebook and wrote the first name on our list, Mara Singh, Finance. Then I slid the page slightly her way. Claire glanced down, took my pen from my hand like she'd done it 100 times, and added 2 more names. Her knee stayed against mine. For the first time in 3 years, we weren't sitting across the room from each other. We were on the same side of the table. By lunch, Claire and I had lied to 6 people, insulted each other in front of 12, and built the outline of a fraud case between breakout sessions on adaptive leadership. Romance, I discovered, did not make corporate espionage less tedious. It did make it harder to concentrate when Claire sat across from me with her hair pinned up, tapping her pen against her lower lip like she was personally trying to ruin my professionalism. You're staring again, she murmured without looking up. We were in a workshop circle while a consultant named Brad asked us to define trust. I'm reflecting on team values, I whispered. You're reflecting on my mouth. Can't both be true? Her pen stopped. For one beautiful second, Claire Whitcomb blushed. Then she leaned back and said loudly, Ethan, I'm not sure your framework accounts for emotional intelligence. The group turned toward me. I smiled. Claire, I'm impressed you recognized a framework. A ripple of laughter moved around the circle. Graham, standing near the door, looked pleased. Claire's eyes glittered. Under the table, her heel brushed my ankle once. Not accidental. I nearly forgot my own name. Our first real break came from Mara Singh in finance, who cornered me near the catering table and said, If this is about Vale's vendor approvals, I've been waiting for one of you to ask. I kept my face neutral. One of us? Mara glanced across the room to Claire, who was pretending to argue with a regional director over customer acquisition costs. You and Whitcomb, Mara said. He kept you apart for a reason. By 3, we had copies of invoice chains. By 4, Claire had charmed a client services manager into admitting Graham had redirected account credits to a shell vendor. By 5, legal's assistant had slipped us a record of complaints that had somehow never reached the board. And through it all, Claire and I kept performing. Your assumptions are reckless, I said during the afternoon panel. Your caution is a sedative, she replied. Your forecast belongs in a horoscope. Your deck has the sexual energy of a printer manual. That one almost broke me. Graham laughed the loudest. His second mistake. At 6, the retreat moved into the evening reception, a rooftop cocktail hour with skyline views and tiny appetizers no one could identify. Graham worked the crowd like a man who believed charm was legal protection. Claire appeared beside me near the railing holding sparkling water. "You look tense," she said. "You just compared my deck to office equipment in front of 40 people. You liked it. I respected it. Same thing for you." The wind lifted a loose strand of her hair. Without thinking, I reached out and tucked it behind her ear. The gesture was small, too intimate. Her smile faded. For a moment, there was no rooftop, no Graham, no evidence burning a hole in my phone. Just Claire looking up at me like she was deciding whether to let herself want something. I lowered my hand. "Sorry." "Don't be." Her voice was quiet enough to belong only to me. I wanted to kiss her right there in front of the skyline and everyone who thought they understood us. Instead, I said, "Come with me." Her brow rose. Very commanding. "I'm trying it out. You need practice." But she followed. We slipped through a service door into a stairwell lit by emergency bulbs. The second the door shut, the noise of the reception dulled to a distant hum. Claire exhaled and leaned back against the wall. I stood in front of her, not touching. "Hi," I said. She blinked, then laughed softly. "Hi?" "We haven't actually said that today, not as us." Something in her face softened. "Hi, Ethan." My name sounded different in her mouth when it wasn't a weapon. I stepped closer. "I missed you today." "You were 10 feet away for most of it." "Exactly." Her expression wavered between amusement and tenderness. "That is inconveniently sweet." "I'm full of terrible surprises." She reached for my lapel, smoothing it with unnecessary care. "I missed you too." Those 5 words did more to me than any rooftop view could have. I kissed her then. Not like last night when everything was discovery and unraveling. This kiss was stolen in a stairwell, urgent at first, then slow when her arms slid around my neck and mine circled her waist. She fit against me with a familiarity we had not earned and somehow deserved. When she pulled back, she didn't let go. "I'm scared," she admitted. I brushed my thumb along the side of her waist. "Of Graham? Of what happens after?" She looked down at my tie. "When we don't have a common enemy, when the adrenaline fades, when you realize I'm still the woman who will fight you over projections." "I'm counting on it. Ethan, I'm serious." I tipped her chin up gently. "I don't want you because we uncovered a conspiracy in business casual." Her mouth twitched. "I want you because last night you trusted me with the tired parts. Because you're brilliant and infuriating. Because you steal fries and pretend you don't. Because when you walk into a room, I either want to argue with you or kiss you, and frankly, both options have appeal." Her eyes shone in the weak stairwell light. That was dangerously close to a confession. It was a draft. Needs edits? Of course it does. She rose on her toes and kissed me once, soft and certain. "Keep the part about wanting me. I'll make it the thesis." For 2 minutes, we stood there, like people on the edge of something terrifying and good. Her forehead rested against my chest. My hand moved slowly over her back. Then my phone buzzed. We both froze. I checked it. A message from Mara. "He knows someone pulled the files. Be careful." Claire read it over my shoulder. The warmth drained from her face, but her hand found mine and held tight. "No running," she said. "No running." We returned to the rooftop separately. Graham intercepted me near the bar. "Ethan," he said, smiling without warmth, "walk with me." Across the terrace, Claire saw us. Her body went still. I gave her the smallest shake of my head. "Not yet." Graham guided me to a quieter corner near the planters. "You and Claire have been busy." "We're always busy. You scheduled 11 hours of programming." His smile thinned. "Don't get clever. I thought that was why you hired me." He stepped closer. "Whatever she's told you, remember who she is. Claire looks out for Claire. She'll burn you if it gives her an exit." Once, that might have worked. Now all I could think of was Claire asleep on my shoulder, vulnerable and unguarded, trusting me not to move. "You miscalculated," I said. Graham's eyes sharpened. Before he could answer, Claire appeared at my side with 2 glasses of water and the expression of a woman arriving to ruin a man's evening. Graham, she said brightly, are we threatening employees near the shrubbery now? Very innovative. His gaze flicked between us. And there it was. Understanding. Not all of it, but enough. You two, he said softly. How disappointing. Claire handed me a glass. Our fingers touched. I know, she said. We're devastated to lose your approval. Graham leaned in, voice low. Be careful. Office romances are fragile. Careers are more fragile. He walked away before either of us could respond. For a moment, we watched him rejoin the board members, his smile already back in place. Then Claire took my glass from my hand and drank half of it. Technically, I said, that was mine. Consider it a relationship tax. I turned to her. Relationship? She froze. The word had slipped out before she could armor it. A dozen careful answers passed through her eyes, denial, deflection, sarcasm. Instead, she lifted her chin. Yes. My heart did something embarrassing. Yes? I repeated. Don't make me say it twice on a rooftop surrounded by vice presidents. I stepped closer, just enough that no one else could hear. Claire, are you choosing me? Her eyes held mine, steady despite everything. I already did. I didn't kiss her, not there, not with Graham watching. But I took her hand under the narrow cocktail table hidden by the white linen, and she laced her fingers through mine. By 9, we sent the files to an outside board member Claire trusted, along with a request for a closed emergency meeting in the morning. At 9:06, Graham looked across the rooftop and saw us standing too close. His face went blank. Claire squeezed my hand once beneath the table. Tomorrow, she said, we end his little war. I looked at her, the woman I'd been told to hate, the woman I was beginning to love, and squeezed back. Together. The next morning, Claire wore red. Not bright red, not reckless red. A deep, controlled red that said she had read the agenda, found it lacking, and brought a match. When she stepped into the private boardroom, every conversation thinned. Graham was already there, seated at the head of the table as if furniture could prove innocence. The outside board member Claire had contacted, Evelyn Shaw, sat near the window with a tablet in front of her and no expression at all. Claire paused beside me. Nervous? I murmured. Obviously not. You alphabetized the evidence folder. That's called excellence. That's called fear with tabs. Her mouth twitched. Hold my hand under the table and I'll forgive you. So I did. The meeting began with Graham's voice smooth as polished stone. I understand there are concerns, he said, though I'll admit I'm disappointed by the lack of internal courtesy. Claire's fingers tightened around mine once. Then she let go. Not because she was withdrawing, because she was standing. I think courtesy ended when you spent 3 years manipulating your own leadership team to hide vendor fraud, she said. The room went silent. Graham gave a small laugh. Claire, dramatic as always. I stood beside her. Not dramatic, I said. Documented. We didn't perform that morning. We didn't bicker for an audience. We didn't fling clever insults like shields. We stood shoulder to shoulder and took turns laying out the truth. Mara's invoice records, altered calendar invites, vendor payments routed through a shell company tied to Graham's brother-in-law, complaints redirected before they reached compliance, emails he had edited just enough to make Claire look reckless and me look obstructive. The board members' faces changed slowly. Graham's changed all at once. First irritation, then calculation, then something colder. You two are making a mistake, he said. Whatever personal attachment you've developed has clearly clouded your judgment. There it was, his last weapon. Us. For 1 second, I felt the old instinct to step back, deny, protect the professional line. Claire turned to me, not afraid, not asking permission, choosing. I looked at Evelyn. My judgment has never been clearer. Claire's eyes warmed, but she kept her voice steady. Mine, either. Graham leaned back, but his control was gone. You think this is romantic? You think playing office lovers makes you heroes? No, Claire said. I think telling the truth makes us free. I had loved her in pieces before that moment. In the hotel room, barefoot in my shirt. In the stairwell, brave enough to say she was scared. At the rooftop table when she called it a relationship before she could stop herself. But watching her stand there, furious and elegant and done being used, I understood the shape of the whole thing. I was in love with Claire Whitcomb, not because she had once offered me one night, because that night had become the first honest place either of us had stood in years. By noon, Graham was escorted out by security and legal counsel. He did not look at me as he left. He looked at Claire, like he still couldn't believe she had stepped out of the role he wrote for her. She didn't flinch. When the door closed behind him, the boardroom held its breath. Then Evelyn Shaw folded her hands. "Mr. Brooks, Mrs. Whitcomb, we'll need formal statements." Claire nodded. "Of course. And after that," Evelyn added, "I suggest both of you take the afternoon." Claire blinked. "The afternoon? You've earned it." Outside the boardroom in the empty hallway, Claire stopped walking. For the first time all day, her composure cracked. Not dramatically, just a small tremor in her breath. I reached for her, then hesitated. "Can I?" She answered by stepping into my arms. I held her there in the corridor against the hum of hotel air conditioning and the distant clatter of retreat staff tearing down coffee stations. Her forehead pressed to my chest. "It's over," she whispered. "The Graham part is." She tilted her face up. "And the rest?" "The rest is up to us." Her eyes searched mine. "That sounds dangerously healthy." "I'm trying it out." "You need practice." "I have an excellent coach. She's expensive." "I've seen her invoices." Claire laughed, and then she kissed me. Not hidden, not stolen in a stairwell, not disguised as rebellion. A real kiss in a bright hallway, with conference badges still hanging around our necks and no one left to perform for. When we broke apart, she looked almost shy. "Dinner?" she asked. "Is this a date?" "It has subclauses." "Of course it does." "No talking about Graham for the first hour." "Agreed." "No spreadsheets on the table." "I'll try." "And no pretending this is casual." My heart went quiet and full. I brushed my thumb along her jaw. "I'm done pretending." That night, we went to a little Italian place 3 blocks from the hotel, the kind with candlelit tables and too much garlic and a waiter who clearly thought we were newlyweds because we kept smiling at each other for no reason. Claire stole a bite of my tiramisu. I let her. "You're learning," she said. "I'm evolving." She pointed her spoon at me. "Don't steal my line." After dinner, we walked along the river, shoulders bumping, hands finding each other without discussion. "No strings," she had said. But some strings, I learned, aren't traps. Some are bridges. 6 months later, Graham was under investigation. Marlowe and Finch had a new CEO, and Claire and I had become the company's least believable success story. People expected fireworks when we worked together. They got better results instead. We still argued. Constantly, passionately. Once we debated a client expansion plan so intensely that Morrow walked by the conference room, saw us through the glass, and said, "Are they fighting or flirting?" "Yes," our assistant replied. Claire heard about it and looked delighted. By the following spring, we left Marlowe and Finch and started our own advisory firm. Our first office was tiny, drafty, and above a bakery that made everything smell like butter by 10 a.m. Claire chose the name because, according to her, mine sounded like a law firm that would sue a lighthouse. On our first day, she stood in the doorway with 2 coffees and looked around at the bare walls, secondhand desks, and single stubborn fern I had bought for morale. "This is terrifying," she said. I took 1 coffee. "Obviously not." She smiled. Then she crossed the room, set both cups on my desk, and slid her arms around my waist. No audience, no rivalry, no strategy. Just Claire. "I'm glad I asked you," she said. "To start a business?" "That too." I kissed her slowly with morning sun pouring through the windows and the bakery ovens warming the floor beneath us. Later, when clients came in, we were professional, mostly. But before every major pitch, Claire would still lean close and whisper, "Try not to put the room to sleep, Brooks." And I would whisper back, "Try not to mistake charisma for data, Whitcomb." Then she'd squeeze my hand under the table. Our secret signal. Our reminder. What began as One night, then back to hating each other, became the night we stopped letting someone else define us. What would you have done if your biggest work rival proposed one no-strings night and you discovered the hatred between you had been manufactured all along? Have you ever experienced something similar? Tell me your story in the comments. If you like this one, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.